Okay, so guys, we're up on YouTube. They should be able to hear me right now as well. Hello, everybody. Um, I will let you guys take it from here. Just kind of introduce yourselves and then kind of get going.
Mark, do you want to go first?
Sure. Mark Corbett. I'm the head men's coach for Napa Valley 1839. Apologies if there's any background noise. I've just stepped off a delayed flight from Vegas, so you might get some background noise. But yeah, excited to have a conversation with you guys.
Yeah, and I'm Sonny D'Alessandro, the owner of Tulsa Athletic. Been doing this about, 13 years. Have had some sort of competitive success on and off the field, and kind of, you know, been looking forward to having a good talk with everyone and sharing and learning. So, yeah, looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, and I think Sonny, why don't you talk about the history and the success that you've had with Tulsa to get us going?
Yeah. So, kind of very early on, we were lucky to, um, win our conference a couple of times and play in a couple of regional finals. And in 2020, let's see, 2021, we had a breakthrough, won our first regional championship, and then and made it to a national championship. And then 2023, we were able to win a national championship. And along the way, we've played in 7 U.S. Open Cups, or our seventh U.S. Open Cup will be tomorrow night against the local pro team here. So, yeah, competitively, we've had our fair share of success, and just kind of want to jump into a few of the models that I see that work, what our model is, listen to Mark, what your approach is, and then maybe take some questions. Tell us about the spoils of victory in the Northern California area.
Yeah, so I joined the club. I think the club got going in 2017. I come over in 2020, and 2 weeks of pre-season, two games, and then COVID hit. So it was actually, although it was disappointing not to play, it was probably a great time for me to be able to kind of see what was going on, spend some time to strip back in terms of how things were currently done, what was good about that, what maybe needed to change. And I think when you work in this industry, you very rarely get time. So that was actually a great way to have time to implement some things that we thought might be successful, whether that was roster building, competition, extra competition, um, playing one season versus playing year round. So all those things were able to be looked at, and then decided kind of what might be successful for us moving forward.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I'm just going to kind of jump in, and this is my opinion. Feel free to add, disagree, whatever. But the way I see this level working is there's essentially three buckets. There is the developmental side, where you've got teams like bigger clubs, academy teams. You've got like your St. Louis City and Columbus Crew would be a good example. They've made UPSL national semifinals with essentially all 17, 18-year-old players. So that's sort of one bucket, is using the space that we operate in at the amateur level as a mechanism to get players a more dynamic look, taking them out of that system where they play against other 17, 18, 19-year-old players and playing them against, full grown men, some cultured former pros. And in my experience, that is an effective means to develop a young player. I don't think we see enough of that in the United States. The second bucket that I'll talk to in more detail in a minute, is just basically the college player. We see obviously like your USL2 is predicated on mostly being built around the college player. It's a short form season. The rules you have to comply with through the NAI, NCAA, JUCO rules. Um, Obviously, there's restrictions on what your club can do around like year round, because simply they're back in school playing sometimes. So that said, they come in fit, very competitive. You can form good relationships and keep a pipeline going, and serve as a stepping stone towards them achieving their professional ambitions. The third bucket would be sort of like your local player who's graduated out, and I'll kind of make this bucket a little bit broader, but that local player that's graduated out, the former professionals, and for lack of better terms, we'll kind of say like mercenaries or guys that come in. Um, I'm not afraid to touch on it. I mean, there are clubs around the country that maybe put a little sneaky amount of boot money in the players' boots sometimes, but clubs like that have seen a lot of success. You're looking at someone, Mark, your direction, like El Farolito, right? They don't use the roster's not predicated on any college players. The bonus to that is if you can keep a good group, then you can be competitive literally 12 months of the year. The downside is a lot of these guys have jobs, right? You're not going to be able to run a session every day. You kind of, sometimes you've got to be malleable around their schedules and work to what they're able to provide and bring to the table. So I will touch briefly on what our model is, and then Mark, I'm going to kind of hand it over to you, and we'll have a discussion and just kind of I think kind of talk about what's worked and what's not worked. So for us here in Tulsa, we run a hybrid that is probably more bucket B and bucket C. We've got some older players that went to. We're lucky in Tulsa. We've got two Division I universities, in Oral Roberts University and the University of Tulsa. So some top level college guys who played and still enjoy playing, like getting out and are able to work their schedules in the summertime to make training and be a part of the group. And then we use college players as well. A big part of that for us is housing college players. We house anywhere from 8 to 12 players over the course of the summer. I think we kind of write it off as an investment in if you're competitive and you can host playoff games and your business model makes money when you host, and it's a little bit of a gamble, but it's something that we invest in here in Tulsa, and we do sprinkle in a few young players. We had a young kid who's 15 that played in the Open Cup with us, and later got signed by Colorado Rapids Academy. He's a very bright young player. So, but mostly a hybrid of bucket B and bucket C, and that tends to work pretty well for us. We like it because colleges, for me, I think it's a little bit not one speed, but it's very fast and furious. That season, they play a lot of games in a lot of time, or a short period of time. So, getting those players around more cultured players that understand the game, when to press, when to slow down, when to put their hand on their shoulder and tell them to relax a little bit. Like I like the blend of an older, cultured former pro with guys that are currently in it and grinding to get to that next level. That to me, for the college player, I think expedites that learning curve again, and allows them to learn kind of during the match as well. Mark, why don't you kind of talk to us a little bit about how you guys do it in Napa?
Yeah, obviously coming from a European background, I was only ever used to the May all the way through, like kind of finishing your season. Don't have too much burn, and then your pre-season will get going August all the way through to May. So I was brought up and used to a almost like a year-round calendar, and it was a bit of an eye-opener coming here, seeing the kind of good work that you would do, and then you'd have no contact or nothing from because obviously if clubs are reliant highly on college players. The UPSL provided a good platform for us to be able to play a full season. So we would play in the NPSL from Northern California is obviously one of the ones that gets going the earliest in March. We obviously have the weather, so we would play March till July, depending on how playoffs go, and then in August we would jump straight into the full season with UPSL. That provided me to be able to have consistent contact time for players. I like having players that are available year round. I like the kind of where you're saying the college players. For us, we're also heavily having European players that rely on coming in on a tourist visa for 3 months during sort of the May, June, July periods when the European season's finished, so that it allows them to stay sharp during pre-season. With us from housing, that is mixed. Obviously, our ownership group is fortunate to be able to house some of those players, and then we're a very community-driven club. So, with one of our local youth clubs, Napa United, they've been hosting some of our players, and we've got a campaign that's going to be going live shortly to host some players this round. And then what you find is when one good European player comes over, has a good experience, they go back, want to come back again, and oh, by the way, this player wants to come. So it's a bit of a snowball effect, and it did start with one of our players, Harvey, who's been here with us since 2019, I believe. He has a club, Odisea in Spain, and a lot of those guys are coming from his club and continue to play with us in the summer. On as this topics on obviously development and competition. The competition format for us in the fall, while it provided some positives to be able to be year round, there was uncertainty when our last game of that season would be. So our last regular season game was November, and then we were in the playoffs, and that lasted all the way through till mid-June. Mid-January. So not knowing when your last game is over that 3-month period to try and plan for then pre-season for the next. Although it was great, we got down to the last 8 from 200 odd teams. It then provided its own challenges in no recovery time, no rest time. We lost a pre-season game with one of the local pro teams because they wanted to play on a certain date, and I couldn't guarantee that we'd be available for that date because we were still in the playoffs. And the one pro team, Monterey Bay, that we did play, that was 2 weeks after we played our last game, had been non-stop for the year. So the structure of competition, I think, is important to allow us having rest, starting pre-season around January time, and during that January to March, that's when I think you refer to them as those local young guys, that there's an opportunity for them to come in, get some minutes that they might not necessarily get during the season, and they can help showcase them and have them being around better players as well. And so I think it all ties in nicely with the opportunity to develop, but it's got to be the competition structure has got to be right as well to prevent that.
Yeah, and you touched on something there that I think certain areas of the country, like Northern California, are privileged in a sense that they have access to quality competitive players year round. But for me, I think it's important that if you have a club, and you've been, and your squad has previously been predicated or built, comprised mostly of college players, I highly recommend sort of getting out of that mold and finding a fall season, whether it's a local state league, whether it's some cup competitions outside of your typical summer season. Because what I think happens, and I see this a lot, is I think that there's this preconceived notion that if we play without college players, it's just not going to work. And we are a little bit of a hybrid here, but there's always guys looking to play. And if they're out training a couple times a week and getting good games, like, the level of that player will improve too. So what that does is it's on a business level. And I know this is about competition, but it's really difficult to be sustainable in some parts of the country when your season is 9 weeks long, right? So if you have that proof of concept that, Tulsa's not Dallas or LA or Chicago, New York, NorCal, where you're at. But, we've had success in the past. We qualified for this Open Cup through using the open track, and that was using 0 college players. So I think for everyone out there listening, it's important to explore in order to have that proof of concept about what your club looks like without college players too. If nothing else, what you're going to do is those local guys that are still looking for games, they're going to be a little bit sharper. You can do things like try and qualify through the U.S. Open Cup Open Track, which is a wonderful experience. But and yeah, I mean, more than anything, it sort of lifts that veil of, well, we're just relying on college players. So once you get away from that, I think that people tend to realize that, like, hey, the world doesn't stop if we don't use college players. And I think it's really important when we talk about sustainability, but also you're keeping your local guys who you maybe use during your summer, spring seasons, you're keeping them sharp, like Mark, like you touched on. So, yeah, one of the things I'm a huge proponent of is, explore what's going on in your state, call your state association. The UPSL might not be the best platform in terms of the way that they support their clubs, but if you're a well-run club and you market yourself, it doesn't always necessarily matter what platform you're on. I mean, I'm a club over league type of person anyway. So if you're a well-run club, it doesn't matter that much. So, yeah, I would love to see all of these teams that just play, 2-3 months during the summer kind of break that mold a little bit. Have that realization that, hey, a ref can blow a whistle and this badge can play in other months of the year that aren't May, June, and July. And I think overall, when we start doing that, then the amateur game in this country is going to really start to grow and to evolve. And it ultimately will be creating more opportunities, because then we can sync up with pro clubs as well, because we're more on their schedule. We can create relationships where if they have a trialist or some squad rotation players, they can maybe step down and get minutes and valuable games with our level of club. So I think it creates more value for us in this space if we are able to stretch our calendars a little bit.
Yeah, two good points there. One of our players, a young local player, we thought the full season was going to start on the end of August, and it got sprung upon us that it was actually going to be mid August. So we had to, these first two games, we had to play a couple of young local players that probably wouldn't have, been honest, would have got a look in, and one of them become an absolute starter and is still a starter today. He scored in our conference final. He scored in the NorCal final, and he's now gone on to play Division 1 at St Mary's. And then off the back of him being there, we picked up 3 seniors this year who are still in college but done with their eligibility. So now this early part of the season, we've got some quality players that's available, that's in the area, that's come off the back of him moving there. So it's been that's been good. And then the pro club opportunities, playing in the fall. In our NorCal final, we had all 3. One of them was against Roots' like 510, so it's their like U23s team. And then there was the Sac Republic coach and Monterey Bay Scouts all at our game, because their season's done and local games of a high level still going on. And then off the back of that, one of those players goes in and goes on trial for the whole of the preseason for the following year. So playing games is important, and I think if you can start and have a preseason when the pro teams are playing preseason, they need games. So if you can establish yourself as a well-run club with good quality players, they'll be more than happy to play against you. And that's been great for us, and being able to play all of those pro teams in the area locally.
Mark, I want to touch real quick on sort of my bucket B, which is the college player, and I'll share our approach. I know we use, obviously in the summer we're a bit more of a college-based club than you guys are, but and for those listening, this may sound repetitive and these might be things that you already know, but I'm happy to share for those who might not take this approach. But we have a pretty strong relationship with one of the Division 1s in Tulsa, and I think it's important to understand that the cycle in which college players are recruited has become different. When I was a kid, if you were a top high school senior, like you went on and you were you were looked at as there were opportunities in the college game more so than now. That model has sort of, I think, drifted a little bit towards I think junior college gets a little bit more attention now than it ever has, just because on the college side of things, they want plug and play players. So whereas it used to be more of a 4-year cycle, it's almost more of a 2-year cycle now, where they're looking to, yeah, they'll graduate out 10, but they're reloading every year. So, um, with guys who have proven themselves at the college level are ready for, to come in and be impactful. And it's like, it's smart in a sense, because they're essentially doing their vetting through having these players play in college already, and they're just shortening their cycle. Now, one of the things we do with one of the D1s here, we get usually 5 of their top, if not very close to their top 5 guys, but those incoming players from other schools don't count against that 5. So we try and sell that, if we're getting 4 or 5 more players that are going to be enrolling at their school that don't count against that 5, it's genuinely an opportunity for their guys to get together for 3 months, learn to gel, learn how their teammates play, and it expedites that sort of learning curve, rather than having to go through that in preseason and the first quarter or third of the season. Like, they come in and they already kind of have a rhythm of playing together. The other thing that I'll touch on is, it's possible in some of these scenarios to use volunteer coaches at these universities also, where it does not jeopardize their eligibility. So that's a way of sort of the schools having boots on ground and being able to monitor, knowing that their players are being looked after. And they are going to be able to be, again, expedite that way that they're plugged into that college system. So finding those good partnerships with schools is really, really important. But go in with the coach and go in with your philosophical concept, and talk that out and say, hey, is what we do of value to you? Um, a lot of college programs say we want our guys back on July 1, and it's important to know that going in, because the last thing you want to do is, you're housing 5 guys from a school, and then the most important part of your season comes, the playoffs, and you're reduced to, a little bit of a lesser side. So recognition of that is super important. One of the things I'll talk about just briefly too is, I think, kind of spend some time understanding what the players that you have brought in, what they like, what they're into. I don't want to date myself here, but about 10 years ago, when Snapchat first came out, we sent in some filters for 2 of our players, where it was just their cartoon head as a filter, and they loved it. One of them brought his brother back the next season. These were 2 high-level Division I players. His brother actually, I think, took the ball off Nani and scored the goal in the soccer tournament to win the whole thing. But that relationship was built and grown just because it's he liked to be on the socials, and we had our graphics design people sort of get with him and create something. So these kids love to share with their family, posters, pictures, anything that you can have that makes that experience while they're with your club a little bit more heightened, and they feel like they're in a professional atmosphere outside of just the day-to-day training, which is important. The most important thing is communicating with their coaches. Hey, here's what we're doing over the summer. Here's what our program looks like. We're open to your feedback. If you want our feedback during the season, that's some due diligence that some coaches find to be really helpful. Some of them just simply want their guys to be busy over the summer and not, being 18, 19-year-old college kids. So, but yeah, identifying what the kids are into and sort of trying to connect with that and build that can create an experience that builds culture, makes them feel heard and understood. And at the end of the day, if it's a close game in the 85th minute, you got a bunch of guys that are buying into the badge that they're wearing on your jersey. That's not nothing. That'll go a long ways. And we've prided ourselves over the last 13 or 14 years in trying to recognize that and build that, and make players believe that the club that they play for also believes in them.
Yeah, and the college relationship is huge. And what you do get is you get those rosters where there are 30 players. So you might go out and watch a game or catch it on TV, and you might not see 5 or 6 of these players step in the field, but they're good players, maybe good characters as well to have around the group. having that relationship with a coach and a conversation may say, look, we've got high hopes for these 5. We're not been able to get them in because we've got 11 graduating seniors who are going to be going. They're going to be big for us next year, but they've not played a little, played a little, if at all. Clubs like us can provide valuable minutes for them to go in and be fit, ready for the full season. But without that relationship, they probably don't have those opportunities to come in with you, because you just overlook them because they might not have played at all. And then the volunteer coaches, I should have mentioned it with us, St Mary's. One of our players went in to be a volunteer coach. My assistant 2 years ago was volunteer at Cal, and a big D1 school. So you get guys in with a foot in each camp, and it provides a lot easier to be for those college players to become club players as well. I use the college players for a little bit, almost like in England would be the January transfer window. If there's an area where you're really struggling, maybe position specific, you can probably go after a college player that might obviously have limited time available for you, but provide good coverage. And then I think we all know that the college environment with the large rosters is so competitive. Having those players that are used to that environment can maybe enhance your own one with the levels of training, the intensity of training, and that kind of will to win, because obviously that's what they're trying to provide and get in that squad initially.
Mark, you talked about some really important things there, and I want to talk about sort of like the A bucket as the developmental piece, the utilization of this platform as a developmental piece. But before we go there, I want to start off, and I definitely want you to finish this because you are a coach. But we've had some success with, I think we've had 3 coaches get D1 jobs after being a coach for within our organization. One of our coaches was the assistant coach at USL Championship last year and is now a sporting or technical director there. But talk a little bit about, coming in here and the benefits of being a coach, and then also, because this is tricky, but talk a little bit about how clubs can leverage what they do to attract coaches, to build their resumes and to gain that experience coaching, because it is a little bit of a weird space that we work in, and finding coaches that are ambitious and want to get involved is sometimes easy and sometimes more difficult. But weigh in on that a little bit, just to share your experience and some of the benefits and some of the challenges of sort of coaching at this level.
Yeah, I think sometimes it goes with qualifications as well. To get a qualification, you have to have a certain amount of experience. But then sometimes to get that experience, you have to have a certain level of qualification. So there is an element, especially when you're starting out. It's something that I done back in England at Portsmouth when I first started working in the academy. Every club they wanted to develop needed an extra assistant coach. So I volunteered to be one of those assistant coaches. And then when that next cycle of paid positions become available, I kind of already had good relationships with the club, knew a lot of the players. Some of the players were still in there and gone on to be Premier League players now. They're without almost putting your theories and your thoughts into practice, training sessions, games. You're going to be limited in what you can do, and even with our level, we kind of downplay it a little bit with it being amateur versus some of the professional level. But everyone's out to win. Playoffs are super important. We rely on sponsors. We rely on game day operations to attract the fan base to run our business, and everyone wants to be associated with successful teams. So it's there is pressure. So to be involved in a pressure situation, I think can develop you as a coach. Definitely develop the players as well. And sometimes those those aren't successful first time rounds. My first head coaching job was a club in Alton, and I had all these ideas on what I wanted to do when I was working in the academy, and got so many big decisions wrong. Whether that was cutting players, whether that was tactics, just thinking I'd had a qualification, had an academy experience when you're working with men who are coming from day jobs, that the trainings have to be, they don't want to hear from you, they want to play. So your coaching methods have got to be about them, you developing and educating them in a way that's going to be interactive for them, who's the plasterer that's been on a ladder all day, doesn't want to be doing too many stop, stand still sessions because he's tired with all that already. He just wants to come and enjoy himself and have fun. But you've still got to obviously get him playing how you want to be playing on a Saturday. So it's definitely a good learning environment. The assistants are massive. My assistant, Rogelio, he was the former head coach. Lots and lots of success. And you talk about relationships. I don't speak Spanish. He's a Spanish teacher at the high school, high level coach as well. Us as a partnership and has made, I think, taken our team to the next level. When we get guys from Spain and we get guys that are in Northern California that are Hispanic, that maybe has broken English or don't understand my accent, he can simplify it and translate things, and our level of communications daily. I'm the women's head coach at the junior college. He's the men's head coach. We're in the office next to each other. So for our work, we're talking daily. I think our wives probably think that we see each other more than we see them. But yeah, if you've got local youth clubs, because that's another great avenue. The local youth clubs that might have coaches that have only maybe coached kids but want to make that next step and coach adults. They're great resources to tap into as well. And often some of them just want the experience. They might not be able to fully commit, so they're not expecting a salary, but they just want an opportunity to develop and learn. And you might not have you might be one session a week, you might be one session every other week. You may only be able to help on home games because they can't travel to away games. But I think as many good people that are committed to the badge, that want the same end goal, you can get around the place, the better for me.
Mark, the last bucket I kind of want to talk on or touch on a little bit is the understanding, like I said earlier, and utilization of the platform that we have to develop young players. I don't think that everyone understands the immense amount of value that they have, and that it presents to younger players, whether they're in just academies in your local town or whatever. Speaking from personal experience with our club, we had a youth club very briefly for a year, and we decided we wanted a U19 piece of it, because ironically in the United States, by the time you're 17, 18, or 19, typically the competition's been whittled down that, if you're in Oklahoma, you've got to travel to Texas just to get a game. And unfortunately, those are arguably the most important years in your development, is that 17, 18, and 19, when you're becoming a man. Physically, you're starting to be able to, do things that are effective at the next or even a professional level. But when you're still playing in this very linear, I should say rigid model that U.S. soccer exists in, wherein it's just like the best 18-year-olds play against the best 18-year-olds, I think that it denies them an opportunity to get a more dynamic look. So we took a team and we just played one season in UPSL Division 2. And we've got all of the best high school players in Oklahoma. There were a few Oklahoma City kids and mostly Tulsa kids. We trained twice a week and we played these games. And very early on, I noticed that the ones that there were ones that were just adapting quicker than others, and they picked it up. They were absolutely fine, and they were off and running. But about halfway through the season, like everyone started to understand and familiarize themselves with what that opponent looked like. Now, these aren't high level opponents, but like, there is a former pro here and there. It's like, yeah, there's the guy that's maybe he's not the fittest player, but and hasn't left the center circle, but he's cut you guys apart all half long just by receiving the ball, playing it first time, finding channels. He finds the ball at different times. When he makes a run, it's a high soccer IQ type of run, and it's like being able to introduce kids to that player, I think, is important. It's like figure out why he's able to be successful when there's no athletic ability there. There's not much fitness there, and yet he's carving you up. So um, from that little project, I think we ended up having 6 or 7 players go on to play Division I soccer from the Oklahoma area, which is fantastic. I think we had another 5 or 6 that got into D2, maybe another 4 or 5 that played NAI somewhere. So it was a very, very successful program. But I think the main point is that there is a trend of colleges utilizing that JUCO window more. So how do these youth clubs react to that? Because the return on investment from the parents who are paying for their kids to go through these, from the time they're 5 to the time they're 18, they're getting out and there are less players getting scholarships, less players going to college. It's a more competitive environment. I think the people that utilize this platform to have teams can have conversations with those clubs. Doesn't mean you merge. It doesn't mean you buy each other out or anything. It might simply just mean, hey, listen, like we'd like to take some of the top players from the area and on Sundays play in a state league or play in a local men's league and get them these different, more dynamic looks. You might, if the league for clubs gets fall going, I think it's going to go in Northern California next year. That's an excellent opportunity for just add games to prospective young players that way. But it's my experience that when you introduce a very talented young player to a different kind of opponent, they learn how to adapt and they get better quicker. And that's an area that I think is being overlooked in a major way right now in the United States. And like I said, for those people listening who have team or clubs at this level, I would encourage everyone to form relationships, and they might not even have to play on your top team. If your top team plays in the league for clubs and your second team plays in UPSL, make it so that 50% of that team is younger players. And the other thing about that too is I'm also a huge proponent of it doesn't have to be all young players too. If they're playing with one of their youth coaches, I think that's a fantastic opportunity for them to learn on the field with someone who's coached them, who's a high level player. So I think that there's opportunities and ways that the game is being looked at in that sort of A bucket that I mentioned of that youth player that you might not win the most trophies that way, but in terms of producing that next generation of talent, that's going to expedite the American player getting better. I mean, if we can watch clubs like Borussia Dortmund not have any fear of throwing 16 and 17-year-old players out there, American ones even. Christian Pulisic's dad famously said that if had he stayed in America, he just would have been on the bench of a USL championship team somewhere. And he's probably right. There is a bit of a fear-based culture in the United States that doesn't want to give opportunities to young players. So if you can have the wherewithal to recognize local talent in your area and create opportunities for them, I think that teams will start to see the benefit, not just for that player, but I think for that relationship moving forward.
Yeah, I think the relationships with your local clubs, there's so many positives for it. I think first of all, they are probably your fan base. So having those good relationships can attract them. We do something with Napa. We have our local youth clubs. Napa United is one of the youth clubs I actually work for as well in the area. We'll have all the young kids. They'll be the walkout kids. So we rotate that on inviting them into the locker room. They'll meet all the players, watch us do the warm up, and then when we go out to the game, they'll walk the guys out. Then at halftime, Napper Snapper, our mascot's in goal, and all the kids are doing penalty shootouts against them, or in the inflatable kids zone area, which we've got a goal at. And that's hopefully the start of them thinking, of course, every kid wants to be a pro, but we might be the stepping stone to be that. So trying to get in when you're obviously the 13, 14, 15-year-olds are probably a bit too cool for the walkout kids, not quite ready there to be players, but we want to keep them engaged and have them watching the game and learning from those players, and maybe meeting some of them around town, asking questions. Some of our players are their coaches in the youth club as well, and then kind of when the time's right, we're always trying to get pro games during our pre-season. Clubs at our level can be the local youth club's pro equivalent. Like when they're on a break and we're on a break, go and play them. One of my first games that I had was against our Nappy United U19s, and a couple of those train with us regularly and play with us. But without those relationships, you are a little bit short on your roster sometimes. So they're perfect players that can come in. We have a lot train with us regularly. When we're successful in the fall, a lot of that was on those young local players that were kind of training players, but provided us opportunities to be able to do 11v11 and have a practice game within training and hone in how we wanted to play. And then you hope that continuing training, being around stronger players, helping their development, they can then come on and maybe become squad players before they become starting players. I think the culture here with the youth programs, where it's the pay and play model, and you're only ever really playing with your own age group. Those of you that want to go and be pro or go to college, then all of a sudden you're 18, you've been going to a college program, but you've never played anyone that's 22, 23, 24, that's now a man. And some really struggle with that. So if you can give them opportunities when they're 15, 16, 17, I think it's going to be their own for their own benefits. Me personally, I know I was playing when I was 16. I was playing in the under 18s. When I was 17, I was now in a men's locker room. We were going to go for beers after the game, and you learn other things about just life in general, being around some older players and adults. So has many benefits, and it's something that we do. Last year we played, our first team were in the NPSL, and we played in the UPSL as well at the same time. So that provided some opportunities to play for our younger squad players to get some games. And it's something that we will definitely bring back in the future, of having a second team. And that second team, the purpose is making sure it's full of young local players. We do that on the women's side. We're in the WPSL with our college international players, if you like, and we play it was UPSL last year. We're playing WPSL 2 this year, and that roster is made up of 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 youth for junior college players, that all from the area. To hopefully we get then the next one that breaks through to the first team. She goes off to college, has a good experience, and comes back with 2 or 3 teammates from her college. So yeah, it's definitely, and I think finishing up on this, I think the beauty of the level we play at is every single week you're playing against a club who do something different to you. Like challenging games for us in this area with Farolito, who's full of men, ex-professional, some of our younger guys. It's a good learning curve. Up here's the level. They're the current national champions. We want to get past them. Here's where we gotta be. And then you'll play against maybe an FC Davis, who are right on the doorstep of UC Davis. It's fit college players that wants to run all day. And then we got ourselves that maybe do something a little bit different and give those teams an opportunity to have some young, fit European players that play a different style, and provides learning opportunities for those clubs playing against us as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. I
You
remember
guys,
reading it. Go ahead, Todd.
well, I was just gonna say we got a couple questions from the chat. Go ahead and make your point, Sonny.
No, just briefly. I remember a long time ago reading an article in a tennis magazine, and they just touched on the importance of playing an opponent of different levels. You know, when you play someone who is, like Mark touched on, a professional team, like obviously you're playing up to a level, but it's also okay if you're playing, against a youth academy. It allows players the freedom to be creative, to try things, to express themselves maybe a little bit more. So, yeah, playing a variety of different styles of opponents, I think that there's a lot of value in that as well. So, yeah, good stuff, Mark. I think we're going to go to Todd for a couple questions now.
All right, guys, good stuff. Like you said, appreciate it. I believe it's pronounced Atla from Duluth, which I think weren't you born near Duluth, Sonny? Is that
I was
correct?
Hayward, Wisconsin. Yeah.
There you go. Atlas says, what are your thoughts on having a noticeable drop off between a spring and fall season when you go from college guys to local amateurs? And does that turn off fans?
So I think that's a really good question. Well, I think the way I would answer it is that drop is not as big as you think. And I will present this from the perspective of Tulsa, Oklahoma, which is not a huge place, but we've got a bunch of ex-college players that are either just finished or they're still playing, and a lot of them play Sunday league, cash leagues, stuff like that. So there's an appetite for players to continue to play. I mean, um, we, again, we were able to qualify for the U.S. Open Cup using 0 college players this fall. So, and we have a victory against a professional team, knock wood, without the utilization of college players. So I would say that there is a little bit of a drop, but if those older players get their fitness back, it's not it's really not that noticeable. Now, as far as does it impact the way that the club engages with its fan base? It can. I think that again that's uh, a regional thing. I mean, we're in Oklahoma, so when fall rolls around, there's not a whole lot of other things than Oklahoma football. So, you might have to schedule some Sundays or figure out when OU is kicking off or whatever. But, if you're putting on a good product, people have fun, and the football's good, and you're winning games and lifting trophies. I think that there's always going to be a place for that in communities. So you also never know until you try. So I would say there is probably a small drop, and if you run it well, I think that you can still engage with the fan bases.
Yeah, I'd add on that is it allows you to be active and engaging with your fans and your community, playing year round. Trying to go just for 9, 12 weeks and then pick everything up. People may forget about you, or their interests have gotten elsewhere. So I think it does. I would say maybe the squad, it's the depth that drops. I think the starting 11s, I don't think is too far away, especially when you get the later stages. We had a unbelievable game versus Roots' 21, which is probably maybe our biggest attendance that we had in a competitive game, and that was the NorCal Fall playoff game. Hammering down with rain, but as I said earlier, the benefits of that, it was pro coaches were there watching that the season's just finished, so there's a lot more positives and benefits, I would say, than worrying about the slight level of drop in play.
Yeah, that's right. And Sean Mann, who's one of the owners of Detroit City Football Club, when they were spending time in an amateur league, they actually said it's really hard to be. He would say we're a football club for 9 weeks of the year, and we're a T-shirt company for 43 weeks of the year. So I think when you start cutting into those other weeks, it's basically just more of an opportunity to engage with the community. I do think, to Atla's point, that there is too much also. You don't want to wear everybody thin. You don't want a game should be special. You don't want to play 52 weeks out of the year. But I do think that like Sean said, it's difficult running a business where you're only out playing 9 weeks of the year. So, yeah, great question.
All right, guys. Another question comes in from, by the way, Atlas says Hayward, the birthplace of his club, Superior City FC. So a shout out for them in the chat. Benjamin says, I'd love to hear from both of you on what keeps you invested in your specific role in soccer. Maybe a success story that motivated you during a difficult time.
Mark, you want to go first, or you want me to go first?
Sure. I think everyone that's involved has an absolute love for the game. Whether that's developing players, building stronger relationships with people. I come out. I was a chef before I got into coaching. Went to school for that. Decided to go on a summer coaching job over to the States with MLS camps. Had a random host family for 2 to 3 weeks and moved on. And actually, that host family back in 2007 is now the owner of 1839 and the one that got me out. So we kept in contact. I went back to had a year at Chelsea in the foundation, went to Portsmouth, done lots of work with their academy and their development sides. And then 11, 12 years later, the team's created and I'm brought back over to the US and have the gamble to see if this is something we want to do in a different country. And 5 years later, we're just heading home to get a new 3-year work visa and hopefully a citizenship very soon.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. It's incredible how soccer can impact your life. I'll give you sort of the flip side of a great question, Ben. I remember we cook breakfast for the guys. I own a little restaurant in Tulsa, and I remember cooking breakfast. We played right around the corner. We got beat 3-1. There wasn't much attendance to our arch rivals, to Oklahoma City, nonetheless. And I remember going back to the restaurant, looking at the sink, and it was full of dirty dishes. And I was just in there scrubbing them, eggs, obviously, so it was miserable getting them off. And I just remember like having this moment. It was a challenging moment because doubt creeps in. Like I won't lie. Like there have been times in doing this, and people from the outside might look at what we do here in Tulsa and be like, "Oh, it's all roses there." I have times when I think to myself, "Is this too hard? Is all of the time and the commitment worth it?" I think my mantra is sort of, we are a product of what we overcome. So, when you're having that hard moment, if you're able to work through it, or you have people you can call that'll like help spur you on, or understand that your club means something to people. It provides them, a release from a rough week at work, or, a chance to just come out and support, whether you're Annapolis Blues getting 7,000 people, or whether you're a little state league team that's just getting going and you're getting 15 people. Like, what you do is important, and you are a product of what you overcome. So when I'm feeling kind of down, I sort of try and go back to that. My moment, my big moment was we played in a national championship game, and we got scored on in the 75th minute to go down 1-0. And I just remember, I just remember thinking, after all we had been through, and there's some well-publicized relationship issues with the league that we were playing in at the time, but I remember thinking to myself, I don't know if I can do this again if we get this close and don't do it. And then my mantra kind of came back. It was like, you know what? Fuck that. Excuse me, but like, whatever happens, like, I will grind again. Whatever happens. And I was really lucky. It was a special night. The soccer gods kind of smiled down. I still get emotional talking about it. And, you know, we won in penalties, lifted our first national championship. And it wasn't a guy that trained with us all summer. It was a guy that had left and had been working. And we called him and was like, we might need a guy in the national championship to be number 18 on the bench. So, like, what we do is it's about the duct tape for me that keeps these things together, right? It look from the outside, a lot of teams do a good job of making it look like, oh, this is the most professional, well-run organization. And a lot of them are very good, but it's it's that battling, it's that grit, it's that how can you keep the thing pieced together. And I like to think that we're one of the better clubs with the duct tape, if for lack of better phrase. But yeah, those couple of examples kind of, just really, really special nights for me and for our fan base and for the volunteers, just for the people that love our club. It's a great question.
Yeah, and I think as well, when you are having those sort of down moments, is when you stepped away from the field. We've had a couple of good examples of a rival team. We just beat them in the playoffs. We end up having beers with their team at our after party. We're having a couple of beers in the parking lot. Our rival club is, most people during the game, you want to bury them. As soon as the game's finished, you want to lift them up. You want them to come good again and stick around and be strong, because you want those friendly rivalries. And I think some clubs, coaches will be surprised if you was to pick the phone up to a rival coach or a rival club owner. They're probably having the same challenges as you, may have already got through those challenges that you're about to have, and can kind of come back and make you stronger. I think the league we play in is the league for clubs, and we're here for all the clubs and to make everyone better, which is then going to push us on to be better as well ourselves.
I just have one. Go ahead, Sonny.
No, I just think that was perfectly said, Mark. I think the idea and the genesis of the league for clubs was creating a space where clubs can grow through good, healthy communication. I mean, I spoke in Chicago about sustainability at this level, and none of our parents said, "Hey, go start that's how I started my speech." But like, none of our parents said, "Go earn the family fortune by starting a lower league team." So like, we all recognize that. We're here for that. I mean, the league for clubs, we put these things on so that we can communicate with people that aren't even in our league. Like, we want to be known as the league that is here for everyone who operates in this space. And I mean, basically a high tide raises all ships is like the league slogan at this point. So
I would not be doing my job if I didn't bust balls a little bit here, because I've got a green shirt on. Sonny's got a green shirt on. It's St. Patrick's Day in March from Napa Valley 1839 FC, which is all green, and he has no green on. What's going on there, Mark?
Well, I had every intention of wearing a Napa shirt, but as we have to do at this level to make a fortune, well, not a fortune, survive, wearing many hats. I've sat in Sacramento Airport on a delayed flight back from Las Vegas, which was a 4-team youth event that I've just come back from with all the teams. So instead of going home, I had to find a quiet space at the airport and and do it what I had on, which was unfortunately no green for St. Patrick's Day or for 1839.
Fair enough.
He chased some snakes out of the airport, though, right? So you're good.
Before we end this thing, I just want to ask both of you guys, and we'll start with you, Sonny. You talked about how special a moment that national championship was. You got a chance for another special moment tomorrow night in Tulsa in the U.S. Open Cup.
Yeah, we've been fortunate enough again to play in the competition. It's a wonderful competition. We play it's a derby. We play FC Tulsa for the third time. They beat us 2-1 in 2022. We were able to shock the world a little bit with a 1-0 result in 2023. And yeah, I mean, it's our team slogan, our club slogan is respect all, fear none. So the ref's going to blow the whistle. If they're going to get a result, we want it to be because they were the grittier side than us, and we're going to set the bar pretty high to be that. So should be a great game. If you're in the area, come out and we'll give them hell. We'll give them hell.
I will. I'll be there tomorrow. Mark and Sonny and I have all broken bread in Tulsa, so Mark's been there before, but he's not able to make it. And obviously that will be streaming as well. So I know a lot of people are watching this that may not be able to be in the Tulsa area. So check that out. And then Mark, you guys get rolling out on the West Coast. You start your season this weekend as well with Napa Valley.
Yeah, the league kicked off this weekend. We obviously didn't play with me being away in Vegas for the tournament, but yeah, we're excited. It's first game of a new competition that we're setting like we always do, is to go out and win. We play a team that we've never played before. They played in different leagues. That's exciting, and obviously provides its own challenges of not really knowing what you're going to be completely up against. So the guys have had a good rest, good preseason, played some games, and then preparations all this week, ready for the home opener on Saturday night.
And who do you guys play?
Silicon Valley Rush.
Oh, nice. Will you be so bold as to give us a score prediction, or are you one of those we're just going to go out and try and execute the game plan type of coaches?
I can't sit on the fence. I want to go a 3-1 win for Napa.
All right.
Sorry, Karim.
Hey guys, I appreciate this. I know everyone out there watching appreciates this. I just want to say also, if you hopped in on this late, it's all going to be archived on YouTube. So if you want to share the link with anybody else, feel free to do that. And also just know that if you're in here, we'd love for you to subscribe to the channel. Give us a thumbs up on this video, and you can click that little bell, and you'll get a notification anytime we go live with these in the future. So, Mark, good luck this weekend. Sonny, good luck tomorrow night. And appreciate you guys.
See you guys.
Thank you. Good luck, Sonny.
Thanks, brother. You too.